Yeah. So it's basically the same thing as the third TPA. We just have to. That's what I'm planning on. That's what I'm planning on doing. Is just doing this in not bullet point, but like making it easily. Probably like looking at the prompts for the TPA, so that I can like segment my stuff because I found there were a few of the old assignments from some of the other classes that I ended up going back to like review, and I would have just pulled stuff out of it, but the problem is you have that character limit, and my writing was not all over the place, but it's like the stuff that you need to talk about in each of those segments is like spread out, and you can't really just like pull out two sentences here and make it work with three sentences here and five sentences here. It just you have to write so much more in between that I just found it was easier to like read that old the old whatever writing that I did for one of the TED classes, and then just rewrite that in different words and try and cut down. Did you run out of room on some of that shit too?
Dude, no, I actually just wrote like halfway through it. I'm like, screw it, get it in.
You're like halfway is good. Yeah, I figured out that I wrote way too much.
Yeah,
I'm gonna write like more evenly spaced sections. I think is how I'm gonna do it.
a good paragraph for each one. I think is what I look
The
for.
hardest one is that second one where you had to write your entire like lesson plan for the week or whatever, because I don't I mean biology, I remember it being fairly lab based, but we have so many labs that it's like to write up a lab in that format is like impossible. You just have to summarize the whole thing.
Every day is something different. It's a whole new topic. Like one day we talk about skin color. The next day we're talking about the evolution. We talk about Darwinism. The next day
Yep.
we're talking about something else. It's just like
Yeah.
it's too much. Um,
But
going back to
yes,
the assessment, I guess.
so yeah, this assessment I gave it today, and you know, anecdotally, it's kind of what we expected from when we talked in class. You know,
Yeah,
the kids, I did it. I just cut up some of their old labs, like a couple of the best students who had really good labs. I took one of our old labs as kind of like a, let's review some of the stuff from this last unit because we're doing like two geology units. Um, so I just cut them up. They had the hypothesis, the kind of what this data summary was, all the different stuff that we kind of talked about, the scientific method, and then just shuffled them up, gave them to them in groups, let them work on them in groups for a while, split them into just their like pair share partners, and gave them like different ones, and then yeah, as basically before they walked out the door, they basically in pairs they'd come up and one at a time I'd give them like one last one at the door. They'd just do it on the counter. When they got it right, I'd just reshuffle them, and the next kid would come. So it was fairly straightforward. Um, the the one super gifted girl, I used lots of her labs. So actually, for her, I took something off like the internet, like I don't know if it was a college lab, but it was a higher level lab and something that we hadn't done, so she'd never seen it before. So I don't know. I thought she had to work a little bit harder to do that one. She's pretty good at just kind of like recognizing the patterns of what's going on. So she knew what to look for in the hypothesis statement. She knew that if there was a chart, that was probably like the data section. She's just like really, she got sorted it
right.
like that almost visually before she did anything else. Um, and then I have some kids who are a little bit slower and they need a little bit more help, but talking them through it when they did the door quiz, just like talking them through it and, um, you know, giving them prompts and being like, so how is it that this, especially with like the data, they'd put the data like right after the hypothesis or something. I was like, well, you didn't tell me how you got this. So they'd move it down and then, it'd be in front of something else and be like, well, you talked about this here, but you have no mention of it before. You didn't talk at all about this part of it. So that seemed to work.
I was gonna say, I had something similar going on like that too. For my closure, basically, what I saw is like we had just in a lab,
Mm-hmm.
so I have a lab report in a sense. So to use the lab report, you have to use all those things. You have to write out your observations, your hypothesis, your background. You write out all that stuff. Basically, you're going through the whole thing again. So having them go through it the first time, going through the process with them,
Yep.
with seeing them everything, help them create their actual assessment in the end. Like you
Yep.
can see what it was at the end. So like I have my gifts student. Oh my god, my gifts student wrote 9 pages front and back. No, 6 pages front and back. It was 12 pages long.
Yep.
I was reading it, and it was extremely detailed. A little bit more than I needed to see, a lot more than I needed to see. But it was good because she got a lot of the points that she wanted to get across.
Yep.
A lot longer than it really needed to be. We had done an antibacterial lab.
Uh-huh.
Um, my my ELs, I have a couple. My sped students, I have a couple sped students. They did really well. I think they got a lot of the points, and they had some templates they could follow too. But they found it really helpful to go through it as well, and they got a lot of the points too as well. I found that they were a lot better. Watching them do it in class, they struggled a lot more. They had a lot more questions, but
Mm-hmm.
when they did the report itself, when I looked at it, they got a lot more of it done than I thought they would. So it was good. Um, my EL student, they did it really well too. They had to write it up on the computer, so they got to spend some time to actually get to do it.
Was that like
So
in class or after?
it was after class, so they had done everything else before, then in the lab and everything before. So
Yep.
they had a template, so when they came back, all you turned in was the lab itself and some questions, which was good. My EL students, they had a little bit more trouble using the vocabulary, I would say,
Yeah.
but that's due to the lab, not actually the formatting itself. The formatting itself, they got what they needed to do, they put what they needed to do, which was good. And that's what I really wanted to get out of this. I'm thinking that process of putting it in order, what kind of information you need. So they did get what I was looking for to get out of it.
Yeah. Yeah, I think the only thing that I would change, I did it so in, I mean, I only really kind of thought about it last minute. I was like, oh shit, I gotta do this. So I did it somewhat informally, and I literally just cut up kids. I just copied kids' things and cut them up. I think if I did it again, I'd do copies on different colors and then let the kids like keep them so that if they wanted to practice at home, they have all the materials to do it. Just give them, print up the things, let them cut them out. Um, but yeah, it was all right. I think.
I thought for me, the activity was kind of for the level of students that I had for my high school, for freshmen, for example.
Mhm.
It was okay as an introductory, but the closing that we had before was too light in a sense. It was just a
Yeah,
really quick activity, so that's why I just did it before lab, give them the idea of what they needed, so when they did their lab report, they could actually apply it.
yeah,
If I had to change it again, like I did a minor change already by having them using the lab report
yep.
instance. But if I had to change it again, I would actually have lab reports, maybe actually cut those up
Hmm.
and have them like take a look what's in the lab report, so they get a little bit more than just getting the order and what goes in it. So then they have like, oh, this is how it works out. So this is how it's applied and
Yeah.
everything else.
I think I'd also, if I did it again, I'd do. I mean, this one worked out because it was just convenient, but I definitely would do some labs. I liked watching my like gifted girl like actually have to work on a lab she'd never seen. She had no background information, so like her having to actually like go through the same process that most of the other kids have to go through every time. That was kind of cool. When you do labs, do you guys usually write them up like the kids write them all the way up, or do you have things where a lot of our labs, because we do so many of them, it's like we have fill in the blank, not fill in the blank, but like kind of fill in the blank, like things that have the lab procedures and places for them to write some answers, but it's never, at least in the earth
Yeah.
space, it's never in that straight. Like I remember being in a biology class where we did it exactly how you're talking about, and on the piece of binder paper, and you had headings and indentations of different amounts, that kind of stuff.
For this particular lab, we did. For the labs we've done before, we have not.
Yeah.
For labs we've done before, we usually have like, oh, we give them a data table that they need to fill out,
Yeah.
and then we give them like a questionnaire sheet that they have to answer and go through like analysis.
Well, then I think that's good. That's probably a really good way to kind of introduce laboratory
That was
reporting.
good.
Yeah.
That was helpful, like just part of it. This one was the accumulation of. So we did. So right now we're in the unit of evolution right now.
Yeah.
So we did several small units, like or small labs, like the bunny lab
Yep.
or some other labs. This one we did was our last lab, was our antibacterial
Uh
lab,
huh.
where we actually did like cultures and stuff like that.
Yeah.
So during this lab, we had them take more data, make questions. So we had them go through the process of actually writing a whole lab report.
Yeah.
I believe the only one we actually do the whole like the whole freshman year for biology actually. So it's just really an introduction to
Yeah.
the idea of applying our hypothesis, our scientific method.
I think I actually might be doing I might use your how you presented it as like the improvement for the next time for my TPA, because that's one thing that those kids, a lot of my kids, just because they're freshmen, they can't keep the paper flat, you know? They need to learn so many different procedures that like right at especially the beginning of the year, it was so daunting to even think about having them write up an entire lab, but maybe this is the like activity that's able to kind of translate it from, something that's much more, on a low level to something where they actually have to produce like the final product versus just like fill in some paperwork stuff.
This is good because we actually give them a structure. So like our freshman bio, like we beginning of this unit, we broke things down. We had small labs like, oh, this is how you kind of do it. You have to ask these kind of questions. This
Yep.
kind of data type, this kind of thinking. This lab here, we did like a full kind of we had lab structured already, and they just had to like put it together into like a lab write up.
Yep.
I know our AP bio class. One of their final projects for the semesters is they make their own lab and they do their own write
Oh,
up.
that's cool.
So that, like, I mean, it kind of leads into that because in college, is what you're doing too. You do these full-on labs.
Well, yeah, as a scientist, that's what you're doing. Is it doesn't come to you on a nice worksheet printed out for you. It's definitely
Yeah,
like you have to be the active and critical thinker. So yeah, I definitely like your idea of presenting it like that, and then you basically so your assessment was slightly different, but I think that's like the higher level assessment. You know.
yeah, it was better for. I mean, it was better. Like I got a full application of it. I wasn't trying to assess the. I got an assessment of what they knew, what was in the order, and
Mm-hmm.
what was going into it. But I also got to see them apply it as well
Yeah.
to
You got like
different
that higher order kind of magnitude of it, because they not only had to get the right answer, they had to then do something in that kind of same process and give you the
things.
final product of it.
I did have some students forget certain stuff. They would oftentimes, like, I had some students who would put their results in the procedures,
Yeah.
and that was always just like, oh, no, your
Well, so
results are
it's
separate.
it's the same kind of problems that I was having with kids, like just misordering it. It's
Yeah,
just
or result and conclusion, like,
exactly.
there's separate parts that you want to see what goes into it. So,
Yep.
like, what we did for our assessment, you got the order. I mean, they were already like broken up, but then if they don't apply it, kind of even if they apply it, we still mix it up even more because it's like, oh, now these things are here and these things are
Exactly.
here.
Well,
So
and yeah, just giving them those headings is helpful for them. But if they don't know what the headings mean,
they don't know what to
internally,
do.
exactly, they have no way to apply it. So,
So like this one, I knew that they could get the headings right, or sometimes they would. But like I get the headings right, but they wouldn't get the exact same things in, like what goes in it. So now I have a little bit better assessment, I guess, of what's going on.
do you know if there's a mnemonic for the scientific method?
Yeah, I have. It probably is a couple. I've never thought of it though.
I'm gonna go. I'm gonna try and look at that. I'm gonna see. I'm gonna ask. Well, that's the other thing is you can look it up. You can find a mnemonic for anything. But I'm gonna ask some of the teachers and see if they have like a good one, because that's another thing. Like if they knew the mnemonic, that's the other thing is I have kids who I ask them how many centimeters are in a kilometer, and they just look at me like I'm speaking Swahili, and I say, you know, tell me about King Henry, and they give me the whole King Henry died drinking chocolate milk, and I'm just like, okay, now tell me, and they're like, oh yeah, and they do the whole thing. It's kind of funny to see them go through that thought process. It's just like they know the mnemonic in their head, and they don't even know what it means until they actually write it out and process through, like, oh yeah, that's how you do
I think
conversions.
that ties back to the type of students you actually might have. Like I have students who might like. I guess my culture, you know, probably similar. Like I have a lot of people who do deal with like computers and stuff like
Yeah.
that.